Chapter 23. Warden Jackson and Officer Wilson were morning people, just like everyone else. They dropped by at early hours to surprise us with an inspection. Usually, when days go by without them showing up on late nights, they show up on Saturday mornings when the inmates are on their recovery time from the night before. I was down in the kitchen early trying to get a head start on prepping for breakfast. The building felt different. Usually, there is at least one guard around the kitchen to make sure everything is in order. I only noticed one inmate sweeping and mopping the floor. As I glanced down the hall, I saw Warden Jackson and 3 other officers headed to the dorms. The look on their faces was one of intensity. I thought to myself that I should keep my distance because I knew I was going to court in a few days, and I didn't want anything or anyone to jeopardize my opportunities. I kept the kitchen spotless on the days that I had kitchen detail. I kept a neat section for my pots and pans, and I even had a small garden where I grew tomatoes and potatoes. Some of the inmates would use my vegetables for making moonshine. I just used it because I love to eat natural vegetables grown from the earth instead of the garbage they fed us there. Officer Wilson walked in and sat down on a stuffed chair as if he was keeping me company. He looked hungover, but he always looked like that in the morning. "How's it going, White?" Officer Wilson asked. "Always something to do, Officer Wilson," I replied with an optimistic tone. I kept on with my duties, trying to ignore him. I could feel his eyes looking at me, piercing through my body like hot metal swords. He walked to the small refrigerator that he kept in the back of the room and grabbed him a tall can of Country Club beer. He sat back down and almost downed the entire can in one gulp. He belched really loud and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "We're having an inspection down in the dorms, and Warden Jackson specifically told me to come down here and get you." I shook my head and turned away from him. I threw my dish rag down and walked directly down to the dorms. When I walked in the room, everyone was standing beside their bunks, looking straight ahead, as if they didn't want to look at me. I could feel in my spirit that something was going down. I walked past the inmates, and when I got to the end of the hall where my bunk was, I noticed my living quarters had been disturbed. Roosevelt's bunk had been turned upside down. I saw the sharpened screwdriver on the ground, laying next to all his personal property. Roosevelt was nowhere in sight. I assumed that he had forgot to look under his mattress, and they found it. As I got to my bunk, Warden Jackson was sitting on my footlocker. "I'm glad you could join us, Mr. White. What took you so long? I didn't want to invade your privacy without you being here to witness it," Warden Jackson said with a condescending look on his face. "It looks like you didn't take me into consideration before you bothered my belongings," I said. My Bible was the only thing from my possessions that was intact. Warden Jackson walked up to me and pushed me aside like I was a rag doll. "Get the fuck out my way before I break your fucking neck, White," Warden Jackson said. I contemplated pushing him back, but there were 3 officers with him that were the size of giants. "Now let's get on with it, White. Let's see what you got." He then picked up my Bible and looked it over for a brief second. "I'm so pleased to see you've been reading your Bible." He turned to the other officers and smiled at them. "I hope you believe in what you read." In one motion, he turned my mattress over. I waited a moment, confused by what I saw. There were 5 bags of heroin lying on the bottom of the floor. I stood speechless as the entire dorm went quiet, and I could hear the silent whispers going around the room. It was like everything was in slow motion. "Do you know what this is, White?" Warden Jackson said while he pointed at the bags. I dropped my head in disbelief. I knew I had been framed, and all I could do was stand frozen. "I'm going to ask you one more time, White. Do you know what this is?" "You tell me, Warden Jackson. You know damn well this isn't my shit," I replied. Warden Jackson bent down and picked the bags up, looking them up and down, trying to decipher what it was. "Officer Wilson, I think you need to come down here," Warden Jackson screamed across the dormitory. "Looks like you ain't gonna make it to see that judge anytime soon, White." "You know that's not my shit." Next thing I remember, was feeling someone walk up behind me and stabbing me with the sharp object in my shoulder, and then hitting me with the blunt object. I remember the stare in their eyes when they were hitting me. The immense hatred they had for me was hard to decipher. I fell to the floor holding my head as the blood flowed down my face. I heard a voice when I was going in and out of consciousness. "Is this your shit now, White?" Someone shouted out. The same voice shouted out while they were beating me. "I hope you didn't call the ride to come and get you, White." As they kept beating me, I felt my soul leave my body. I just tried to lay down in the fetal position to try and keep my full body from being exposed to them. I then heard a voice that was soft and stern at the same time. "Warden Jackson, you can't kill him in front of all these people. You won't be able to justify this. Get this little fucking nigga out of my sight before I kill him," Warden Jackson said. I felt someone pick me up, and as I looked up, it was Officer Jones. "Don't worry, White. I got you covered," he said in a low voice. For some reason, I felt secure in what I heard. Then, everything went dark.